Steve Myers. Stay strong. Stay strong, Steve Myers.
Toastmaster. After a 30-year hiatus, last summer I got back in the saddle of a bicycle. There's some things you don't forget, and that bicycle was a great commuting idea. I live at one of the highest points in the city. I work at one of the lowest. And going to work was a breeze. I loved it. The wind in my hair, the cheer of the crowds. Unfortunately, on the way home, gravity was reversed. And I happened to live on this mountain, which in the Spanish tongue is called Los Altos, which apparently translates to the Himalayas. Because I was arduously working my way up that hill and noticing my legs going slower, and it got to the point where the tires stopped rotating enough to hold it vertical. And I had to do what every cyclist hopes he never has to do. The walk of shame. And so I trudged up that mountain, and neighbors would drive by. I could just feel the shame going on. After a while, I learned to make gestures at the bike as if it were the reason for my... And when I got home, in a puddle of sweat and exhaustion, I found that the neighborhood watch people were quite alarmed. My dogs yapped at me like a stranger. And we had a pair of friends, young friends at home visiting. And they had also ridden bicycles up there, about in their 20s. And they made sure to point out their way they marveled at the difficulty I had with that mountain. You make that easy, no time. And in the weeks to come, they made a point to explain in great detail the speed at which they made it up the mountain, the times they bettered every effort. And I sunk, and I sunk, and I sunk. They did share a story that lifted me up, though. One of their days when they were midway up that mountain, working hard up there, a man in the Jeep drove by and went slowly by them, looked out the door of the open Jeep, as only a driver in a Jeep can do, gave him the thumbs up and said, "Stay strong." And they said when they heard that little mantra, I just gave them energy, and they took up that mountain like it was nothing. And when they passed that to me, I really liked it. Stay strong. It doesn't just encourage you for the future. That acknowledges that you've been doing a good job up to that point. And what a win-win situation. The kids were just jived and loved that encouragement they got with that. And that guy in the Jeep, he must have got something out of that too. When we feel we influence people, we feel validated. And you notice when there's a lack of that, when people don't feel they have an influence on people. There's a lot of dark roads that can go down to. For some, they sink into depressive thoughts that I'm worthless. For some, they'll entertain disruptive thoughts of desperation. But at the bottom of it all, we all want to feel validated. And I think that in our society, as we look out there, a lot of the problems we have is with people who don't feel that they have an influence, who don't feel that they're meaningful. You see that in little children, right? They know if they're feeling attention deprived, they just act up in mischief. And what does the parent do? Lashes out. That child knows that even negative attention feels better than no attention. And as the problem grows older, you see that people will yearn for an involvement, to feel that they matter. And that can show itself in behaviors that have a negative interaction with other people, just because it feels better than having no interaction. The kind of person might fall into verbal arguments or bullying or abusive in a relationship or physical violence. They might abduct or harm or hurt or kill someone just to feel that they had an influence and power in someone else's storyline. I think acknowledging that, we can see a bit of human nature there. And it can empower us to know that if we know that it's there, that's how this machine works, we can steer it for our good. We matter. When we cross paths or brush up with other people, we influence them in some way, perhaps small, perhaps large. And that same energy that will fuel dysfunction can empower kindness, philanthropy, and a sense of goodwill. That gesture that guy in the Jeep gave that day to the two strangers, that filled them with encouragement. Stay strong. We can tap into that energy. Those young men, they passed it forward to me. And I made it up that mountain eventually. Now I'm passing it on to you. Can I close that?